Chapter 16 of Hoot today. Chapter 16. The doorbell rang while the Everharts were eating lunch. On a Sunday, honestly, Roy's mother said. She believed that Sunday should be reserved for family activities. You've got a visitor, Roy's father said when he returned from answering the door. Roy's stomach nodded because he wasn't expecting anybody. He suspected that something must have happened last night at the Pancake House property. One of your buddies, Mr. Everhart said. He said you had plans to go skateboarding. Oh, it had to be Garrett. Roy was almost dizzy with relief. I forgot. Yeah, but you don't own a skateboard, Mr. Eberhart pointed out. It's all right, his friend brought an extra, said Mr. Eberhart. Roy rose from the table, hurriedly dabbing his mouth with a napkin. Is it okay if I go? Oh, Roy, it's Sunday, his mother objected. Please, just for an hour. He knew his parents would say yes. They were happy to think that he was making friends at his new school. Garrett was waiting on the front steps. He started to blurt something, but Roy signaled him to keep quiet until they were away from the house. Wordlessly, they skated to the sidewalk at the end of the block, where Garrett kicked off his skateboard and exclaimed, You won't believe it! Dana Masterson got busted last night! No way. Roy was trying to act more surprised than he was. Obviously, the Mother Paula's property had been under surveillance, just as he had anticipated. The cops called my mom first thing in the morning, Garrett reported. He tried to break into a trailer and steal stuff. As the guidance counselor at Trace Middle School, Garrett's mother was notified whenever a student got into trouble with the law. Dude, here's the killer. Dana told him he was you. Oh, nice. What a butthead, huh? They probably believed him, Roy said. Not even for a minute. Was he alone, Roy said? Anyone else get arrested? Anybody like Beatrice Leap's stepbrother, he wanted to say. Nope, just him. And guess what? He's got a record. A record? A rap sheet, dude. Dana's been busted before. That's what the cops told my mom. Again, Roy wasn't exactly shocked by the news. Busted by what? Shoplifting, breaking into Coke machines, stuff like that. One time he even knocked down a lady and swiped her purse. Mom made me promise not to tell. It's supposed to be a secret since Dana's still a minor. Right, Roy said sarcastically. You wouldn't want to ruin his fine reputation. Whatever. You ought to be doing somersaults. Yeah, for what? Because my mom said they're going to lock him up in juvie. Juvie? No doubt, said Garrett, on account of his rap sheet. Wow, Roy said quietly. He wasn't in the mood to turn somersaults, though he couldn't deny experiencing a sense of liberation. He was tired of being Dana Matherson's punching bag. And while he felt guilty about making up the bogus cigarette story, Roy couldn't help to think about putting Dana behind bars was kind of a public service. He was a nasty kid. Maybe a hitch at juvenile hall would straighten him out. Hey, want to do the skate park? Garrett asked. Sure. Roy got on his borrowed skateboard and pushed off hard with his right foot. The whole way to the park, he never once checked over his shoulder to see if he was being stopped. It felt good, the way Sundays ought to feel. Curly awoke in his own bed, and why not? The Mother Paula's vandal was finally in custody, so there was no reason to spend a night on guard at the trailer. After Officer Delinko gave him a lift home, Curly had entertained his wife and mother-in-law with the blow-by-blow account of the exciting news. For dramatic purposes, Curly had jazzed up a few of the details. In his version of the story, for instance, the surly young intruder disabled him with expertly aimed karate chop, which sounded more serious than having dirt thrown in your face. Curly also decided it was unnecessary to mention that he'd tripped in an aloe burrow and fallen. Instead, he described the chase as a breathless, neck-on-neck sprint. Officer Delinko's role in the capture of the fleeting criminal was conveniently minimized. Curly's performance went over so fabulously at home that he was confident Chuck Muckle would go for it too. First thing Monday morning, Curly would call Mother Paula's corporate headquarters and give the vice president the details of the arrest and his own heroics. He couldn't wait to hear Chuck Muckle choke out a congratulation. After lunch, Curly sat down to watch a ball game. No sooner had he settled in front of the TV than a Mother Paula's commercial came on, promoting the weekend special, $6.95 for all the pancakes you can eat, plus free sausage and coffee. The sight of Kimberly Lou Dixon playing Mother Paula made Curly think of the cheesy movie he had rented, The Last House on Witch Boulevard 3. He couldn't recall whether it was due back at the Blockbuster that afternoon or the following day. Curly hated paying late fees on video rentals, so he decided to go to the trailer and get the tape. On the drive there, Curly was distressed to remember that he'd left something else at the construction site. His gun. During the night's commotion, he'd somehow lost track of the .38 revolver. He didn't recall having it when he was riding in Officer Delinko's patrol car, so it must have slipped from his belt when he was scuffling with the kid outside the trailer. Another possibility is that he had dropped it when he stepped in that darn owl hole. Misplacing a loaded gun was a serious matter, and Curly was highly annoyed with himself. When he arrived at the fence lot to the area where he and the teenager had wrestled, there was no .38 lying around. Anxiously, Curly retraced his steps to the owl den and pointed a flashlight into the hole. No gun. Now he was genuinely worried. He checked inside the trailer and saw that nothing had been disturbed from the night before. The door was too damaged to be attached, so Curly covered the opening with 2 sheets of plywood. He then began the methodical search, back and forth across the whole property, eyes glued to the ground. In one hand he carried a heavy rock, just in case he encountered one of the poisonous moccasins. Gradually, a harrowing thought seeped into Curly's brain, chilling him like ice water. What if the teenage burglar had swiped the revolver from his waistband while they were fighting? The kid could have stashed it in a dumpster or tossed it in the bushes or something as he ran away. Curly shuddered and pressed on with the hunt. After about a half an hour, he'd worked his way around the section of the property where the earth-moving equipment was parked in preparation for the site clearing. By this time, he'd almost given up the hope of finding the gun. He was quite a distance from where he remembered having it, and in the opposite direction of where the vandal had fled. Curly figured there was no possible way that a .38 could turn up so far away from a trailer, unless an exceptionally large owl had picked it up and carried it there. His eyes fixed on a shallow depression in a soft patch of sand. An imprint of a bare foot, definitely human. Curly counted the toes just to make sure. The foot appeared to be considerably smaller than the husky teenage burglar. Further ahead, Curly came across another footprint, and then another, and still another after that. The tracks led directly to a row of earth-moving machines. Curly advanced with a growing sense of unease. He stopped in front of a bulldozer and shielded his brow from the sunlight. At first he didn't notice anything wrong, and then it hit him like a kick from a mule. The driver's seat was gone. Dropping the rock he'd been carrying for protection, Curly dashed to the next machine in line, a backhoe. Its seat had disappeared too. In a snit, Curly stomped towards the third and last equipment, a grader. Again, no driver's seat. Curly spat out a cuss word. Without seats, the earth-moving machines were basically useless. The operators would have to sit down in order to work the foot pedals and steel at the same time. The foreman's mind was racing feverishly. Either the kid they'd caught last night had a hidden accomplice, or someone else had sneaked onto the property after Curly departed. But who? Curly wondered in exasperation. Who sabotaged my equipment, and when? Fruitlessly, he searched for the missing seats, his mood darkening by the moment. No longer was he looking forward to calling Mr. Muckle at Mother Paula's headquarters. In fact, he was dreading it. Curly suspected that the grumpy vice president would take great delight over firing him over the phone. In despair, Curly headed for the portable latrines. Having guzzled almost a whole pitcher of iced tea during lunch, he now felt like his belly was about to burst. The stress of the situation wasn't happening either. Curly armed himself with a flashlight and entered one of the traveling Johnnies, leaving the door slightly ajar in case of a hasty exit was required. He wanted to make sure no one booby-trapped the toilets with foul-tempered reptiles again. Cautiously, Curly aimed his flashlight down the dark hole of the commode. He gulped as the beam illuminated something shiny and black in the water, but upon closer scrutiny he saw that it wasn't an alligator. Perfect, Curly muttered. Just perfect. It was his gun. Roy was aching to sneak over to the junkyard and visit Mullet Fingers. He wanted to find out what happened last night at Mother Paula's property. The problem was Roy's mother. She'd invoked the Sunday rule as soon as he returned from the skateboard park and the family outing was launched. Making good on his promise, Roy's father took them to the Toonami Trail to an Indian tourist shop that offered airboat rides at the Everglades. Roy ended up having a great time, even though the noise was so loud that it hurt his eardrums. Tall Samoli, who was driving the airboat, wore a straw cowboy hat. He said the engine was the same type used on small airplanes. The rush of wind made Roy's eyes water as the flat-bottomed boat whisked across the saw grades and flats and weaved through the narrow, winding creeks. It was cooler than a roller coaster. Along the way, they stopped to look at snakes, bullfrogs, chameleons, raccoons, opossums, turtles, and bald eagles. And, by Roy's count, 19 alligators. His father got most of the action on video, while his mother took pictures with her new digital camera. Although the airboat was very fast, the ride across the shallows was like gliding on silk. Again, Roy was astounded by the immense flatness of the terrain, the lush horizons, and the exotic abundance of life. Once you got away from the jillions of people, Florida was just as wild as Montana. That night, lying in bed, Roy felt a stronger connection to Mullet Fingers and a better understanding of the boy's private crusade against the pancake house. It wasn't just about the owls, it was about everything. All the birds and all the animals, all the wild places that were in danger of being wiped out. No wonder the kid was mad, Roy thought, and no wonder he was so determined. When Roy's parents came in to say goodnight, he told them that he'd never forget their trip to the Everglades, which was the truth. Mom and his dad were still his best friends, and they could be fun to hang out with. Roy knew it wasn't easy on them either, picking up and moving all the time. The Eberhards were a team and they stuck together. While we were gone, Officer Delinko left a message on the answering machine. Roy's father said, last night he arrested a suspect in the vandalism at the construction site. Roy didn't say a word. Don't worry, Mr. Eberhardt said. It wasn't the young man you told me about, the one who ran away. It was the Masterson boy, the one who attacked you on the bus and he tried to convince the police he was you. Roy pretended not to know, or couldn't pretend not to know. Garrett told me all about it, he admitted. Really? Garrett must have an inside source, the boy's father remarked. The best, said Roy. What else did the policeman's message say about it? That's it, but I got the impression he wanted me to ask you if there's anything else, that you knew about anything else that happened. Me? Roy said. Oh, that's ridiculous, his mother interjected. How would Roy know about a hoodlum like Dana Masterson was up to? Roy's mouth was dry as chalk. As close as he felt to his parents, he wasn't prepared to tell them that he'd known Dana, purposely lured him towards Mother Paula's property, and then made up a story about a stash of cigarettes inside the trailer. It's a strange coincidence, Mr. Eberhardt said. 2 different kids targeting the same location. Is it possible the Masterson boy hooked up with your friend, Beatrice's stepbrother? No way, Roy injected firmly. Dana doesn't care about the owls. He doesn't care about anything but himself. Of course he doesn't, Roy's mother said. As his parents were shutting the bedroom door, Roy said, Hey, Dad? Yes? Remember how you said the pancake people could do whatever they want in the land if they had all the permits? That's right. How do I check up on something like that, Roy asked. Just to make sure it's legal. I suppose you call the building department at City Hall. The building department. Okay, thanks. After the door closed, Roy heard his parents talking softly in the hallway. He couldn't make out what they were saying, so he pulled the covers up over his neck and rolled over. Right away, he began to drift off. Before long, someone whispered his name. Roy assumed he was already dreaming. Then he heard it again, and this time the voice seemed real, so he sat up. The only sound in the bedroom was his own breathing. Great, he thought, now I'm imagining things. He lay back on the pillow and blinked up at the ceiling. Roy? He went rigid under the covers. Roy, don't freak out. That's exactly what he felt like doing. The voice was coming from under his bed. Roy, it's me. Me who? Roy's breath came in rapid bursts and his heart pounded like a bass drum. He could feel the presence of the another person beneath him in the darkness, under the mattress. Me, Beatrice, chill out, man. What are you doing here? Not so loud. Roy heard her slide out from underneath the bed. Quietly, she stood up and moved to the window. There was just enough moon in the sky to light up her curly blonde hair and cast a reflection in her glasses. How did you get in the house? Roy struggled to keep his voice low, but he was too rattled. How long have you been hiding here? All afternoon, Beatrice replied, while you guys were gone. You broke in? Relax, cowgirl. I didn't bust any windows or anything. The sliding door on your porch popped right off track. They all do, Beatrice said matter-of-factly. Roy hopped out from under the sheets, locking the door and switched on his desk lamp. Are you completely wacko? He snapped at her. Did someone kick you in the head at soccer practice or what? I'm sorry about this. I really am, Beatrice said. It's just, things got really hairy at home. I didn't know where else to go. Oh. Roy instantly was sorry that he lost his temper. Was it Lona? Beatrice nodded gloomily. I guess she fell off her broom or something. That really sucks. Yeah, her and my dad got in a huge fight. I mean, huge. She threw a clock radio at his head, so he beamed her with a mango. Roy always thought that Beatrice Leap wasn't afraid of anything, but she didn't look so fearless now. He felt bad for her. It was hard to imagine living in a house where the grown-ups behaved so idiotically. You can stay here tonight, he offered. For real? Yeah, as long as my parents don't find out. Roy, you're pretty cool, Beatrice said. He grinned. For calling me Roy. Thanks for letting me crash here. You can take my bed. I'll sleep on the floor. No way, Jose. Roy didn't argue. He gave Beatrice a pillow and a blanket, and she stretched out happily on the carpet. He turned off the light and said goodnight, and then he remembered something that he meant to ask her. Hey, did you see Mullet Fingers today? Maybe. Well, he told me he had something planned for last night. He's always got something planned. Yeah, but this stuff can't go on forever, Roy said. Sooner or later, he's going to get caught. I believe he's smart enough to know that. Then we've got to do something. Like what? Beatrice asked faintly. She was fading towards sleep. You can't stop him, Roy. He's too thick-headed. Then I guess we've got to join him. Excuse me? Good night, Beatrice. That's the end of chapter 16. Let me pull up my reading comprehension questions. Chapter 16 questions. Who sneaked into Roy's room at the end of the chapter? And 2, who did Roy go skateboarding with at the beginning of the chapter? So I'm asking you to remember the names of 2 characters. Thanks for reading with me today.